This is the story of a ghost. A giant hollowed-out ghost that used to be filled with laughter, bright neon lights, and the dreams of millions of children. Walk into any abandoned strip mall in America today. Look at those giant, empty brown brick buildings. Look closely at the facade. You can still see the faded outline of a backwards letter R. It was the ultimate paradise of childhood, a place where you didn't just buy a toy, you entered a kingdom. It was an unstoppable juggernaut that crushed every single competitor in its path for over half a century. And then, almost in the blink of an eye, it simply vanished. To the public, the story was simple. It was the natural order of things. The history books blame a familiar monster. They blame the internet. They blame the rise of a digital world, where children prefer smartphones to plastic action figures. They blame a massive online beast called Amazon for ruthlessly starving brick-and-mortar retail to death. They wrote incredibly long, dry reports about shifting consumer demographics and digital disruption to comfort a mourning public. They wanted everyone to believe that this was just an inevitable tragedy of progress, a natural death. But behind the locked doors of Wall Street boardrooms, the reality was far more sinister. Toys R Us did not die of natural causes. It did not simply lose its relevance. It was targeted. It was hunted. It was systematically dismantled from the inside out by a group of men in bespoke suits who did not care about toys, did not care about children, and certainly did not care about the 33,000 workers who kept the machine running. This wasn't a business failure. It was a corporate execution, a cold, calculated heist, masquerading as a financial rescue mission. And the weapon used to kill the world's greatest toy store wasn't a digital algorithm. It was pure, unadulterated human greed. To understand how this kingdom fell, you have to understand how it was built. You have to go back to 1948. A young World War II veteran named Charles Lazarus noticed something fascinating about the post-war world. Men and women were coming home. They were getting married. They were having children at an unprecedented rate. The baby boom was exploding. Lazarus started small. He opened a simple baby furniture store in Washington, D.C., but he quickly realized a fundamental truth about human psychology. A parent will buy a crib once, maybe twice, but they'll buy toys constantly. They will sacrifice their own comfort, their own savings, and their own luxuries just to see their child smile on Christmas morning. Lazarus shifted his strategy. In 1957, he opened the very first standalone Toys R Us. It was a radical concept. He didn't build a cozy boutique toy shop. He built a warehouse. He lined up endless rows of towering metal shelves. He stocked them from floor to ceiling, with every conceivable toy on the market. It was supermarket-style shopping for children. He created a new retail phenomenon that economists would later call a category killer. The strategy was brutal and effective. Toys R Us used its sheer size to bully manufacturers. They demanded the lowest possible prices. If a toy maker didn't comply, Toys R Us would simply refuse to stock their products, effectively wiping them off the map. Armed with this leverage, they undercut every mom-and-pop toy store in the country. Thousands of local family businesses simply couldn't compete. They went bankrupt, one by one. By the 1980s and 1990s, Toys R Us was the undisputed king of the playground. They controlled nearly 20% of the entire toy market in the United States. They introduced a lovable mascot named Jeffrey the Giraffe. They created a catchy, hypnotic jingle that was burned into the collective consciousness of an entire generation.
I don't want to grow up, I'm a Toys R Us kid. They got a million toys at Toys R Us that I can play with.
It was a brilliant psychological trap. They didn't just sell plastic and cardboard. They sold joy. They sold nostalgia. They owned the happiest core memories of your childhood. The company was swimming in cash. It possessed billions of dollars in real estate assets, owning the land beneath hundreds of its massive stores. They believed they were completely invincible. Their ego was massive. They were the center of the toy universe. And that blind arrogance made them completely oblivious to the sharks circling in the water below. By the turn of the millennium, the cracks began to show. The retail landscape was changing rapidly. Mass discounters like Walmart and Target began using toys as loss leaders. They sold popular toys at a financial loss, just to get parents into their stores to buy groceries and electronics. At the same time, a tiny online bookstore called Amazon was quietly transforming into a global digital empire. Toys R Us was slow to react. Their stores were becoming old, dusty, and poorly managed. Their website was a technological disaster, but the company was not dead. Far from it. It was still generating billions of dollars in revenue. It held an incredibly valuable sister brand called Babies R Us, which was highly profitable. It possessed a treasure trove of prime real estate all over the globe. It was a stable, cash-generating machine. And that is exactly what attracted the predators. In 2005, a trio of Wall Street giants looked at Toys R Us and saw an opportunity to make an absolute fortune. These giants were the private equity firms Bain Capital, Kohlberg Kravis Roberts, better known as KKR, and a real estate investment trust called Vornado. Together, they launched a corporate maneuver known as a leveraged buyout. To understand a leveraged buyout without the confusing financial jargon, imagine you want to buy a luxury mansion worth $6 million, but instead of using your own money, you convince a bank to loan you $5 million to buy it. Then, the moment you sign the paperwork, you legally attach that $5 million mortgage directly to the house itself. You force the house to pay its own mortgage. If the house can't pay, it goes bankrupt. But you walk away completely clean. That is exactly what these private equity firms did. The trio bought the toy giant for $6.6 billion, but they only put up a fraction of their own cash. They borrowed over $5 billion from Wall Street banks to fund the purchase. And the moment the deal was finalized, they pushed that massive, suffocating mountain of debt directly onto the balance sheets of Toys R Us. Overnight, the world's biggest toy store went from being a stable, cash-rich company to a heavily bleeding casualty of Wall Street greed. The financial structure of the company was fundamentally broken. Toys R Us was suddenly forced to pay over $400 million every single year just to cover the interest payments on the debt used to buy them. Think about that. $400 million every single year, floating away into the pockets of wealthy lenders. This was money that could have been used to remodel the decaying stores. It was money that could have been used to build a world-class e-commerce platform to fight Amazon. It was money that could have been used to lower prices and pay competitive wages to store employees. Instead, every single dollar of profit generated by the hard work of retail employees was immediately sucked out of the company to service a debt they never asked for. The private equity firms had effectively placed a giant financial anchor around the neck of a drowning swimmer. For 12 long years, the management of Toys R Us was forced to engage in a desperate, agonizing game of survival. They couldn't innovate. They couldn't invest in the future. They were trapped in a permanent cycle of aggressive cost-cutting and layoffs, just to keep the lights on and the interest paid. But the masters of Wall Street didn't suffer. In fact, they rewarded themselves handsomely for sinking the ship. Bain Capital, KKR, and Vornado put a sinister fee structure in place. They charged Toys R Us millions of dollars annually for advisory services. Every time the toy company had to refinance its massive debt, the private equity firms charged a massive transaction fee. In total, the trio extracted over $460 million in fees and interest payments. They were stripping the plumbing out of a house while it was on fire. The fatal blow came in the fall of 2017. The holiday shopping season was approaching. This is the crucial window where toy retailers make almost all of their annual profit. But the rumors of the company's financial distress had leaked to the press. The toy manufacturers and suppliers panicked. They smelled blood in the water, fearing that Toys R Us would go under and leave them unpaid. Major suppliers suddenly demanded immediate cash payments up front before shipping a single Barbie doll or Lego set. Toys R Us didn't have the cash. The debt had completely drained their reserves. In September 2017, the company was forced to file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. They desperately hoped to restructure their debt and keep the stores open for the holidays. But the market had lost all faith. The holiday sales were a total disaster. The company's controlling lenders looked at the spreadsheet, realized they could make more money by breaking the company apart and selling off its carcass. In March 2018, the announcement came. The plug on Toys R Us had finally been pulled. There would be no rescue. There would be no reorganization. Toys R Us was going into total liquidation. The fallout was catastrophic. Over 800 stores across the United States were ordered to shut down permanently. 33,000 dedicated employees were thrown onto the street, losing their livelihoods entirely. To add insult to injury, the private equity owners initially refused to pay a single dime of severance to the workers, claiming the company had simply run out of money. The very billionaires who had drained hundreds of millions in fees from the brand left the frontline workers with absolutely nothing. The ending was incredibly poetic and deeply tragic. Photos circulated on the internet of empty dark aisles. In one final heart-wrenching image, a lone statue of Geoffrey the giraffe stood in an empty store holding a tiny suitcase, looking out at a locked glass door. The world's biggest toy store didn't die because children stopped playing. It didn't die because of Amazon. It died because it was converted into a cash-generating vehicle for Wall Street predators, who extracted its wealth and left a hollow shell behind. They learned the ultimate lesson of modern capitalism. In a world governed by corporate greed, not even the most sacred memories of your childhood are safe from liquidation.